musicians, violinist Karolina Mikołajczyk and accordionist Iwo Jedynecki. This duo has been praised not only for their virtuosity, but also for their boundless creativity, showing us how music, even if in its most classical form, is constantly evolving and reinventing itself. Just last year, they were awarded Poland's most prestigious honor for classical music, the Polityka Passport. Tonight, you will hear exactly why. The program we are about to experience brings together Polish and world music, weaving Chopin and Tanzmann with Vivaldi, Piazzolla, and Ravel. It is a journey that reflects both the depth of Poland's own musical tradition and its constant dialogue with the global stage. Poland has always been a land of music, of Chopin, Szymanowski, Bacewicz, Penderecki, and tonight we are reminded that this tradition is thriving in the hands of the new generation. At the Polish Embassy, we believe that culture is one of the most beautiful bridges between nations. Music travels where words sometimes cannot. It builds understanding, friendship, and shared joy. In this spirit, we are proud to celebrate Polish-American relations through the universal language of music, here in the very heart of Washington, D.C. So, let us open our ears, our hearts, and allow ourselves to be carried into this unique world of sound. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Karolina Mikołajczyk and Iwo Jedynecki. Thank you very much.
Hello, hello everyone. We are Karolina and Iwo, violin and classical accordion duo from Poland. And we are here to promote and to present you classical music, music that we love, music by Polish composers, but also music by wonderful European composers. So we started tonight's recital with in the most Polish way, let's say, with a piece by our compatriot, great Polish composer Fryderyk Chopin, and his nocturne, which we obviously arranged for this unique duo of violin and accordion from its original version for, obviously, piano.
And now we are off to present a lesser-known composer, but also an amazing, amazing one, Alexander Tansman. And we're going to present his 5 pieces for violin and chamber orchestra. Today, of course, we have an accordion instead of a chamber orchestra, but it might just prove sufficient. And the 5 pieces by Alexander Tansman are as follows: Toccata, first movement. We have Song and the Music Box as the second movement. We have a third movement of perpetual movement. We have a fourth movement of beautiful aria inspired by Baroque music. And the last movement is called Basso Ostinato. Thank you so much. We are very glad you enjoyed Aleksander Tansman. He is a lesser-known composer, even in Poland, but he's at times not less great than Frédéric Chopin. So hopefully you will add Aleksander Tansman to your playlists, maybe someday. So this was his 5 pieces for violin and chamber orchestra. Now we'll play another piece which is meant to be played on solo violin and with an accompaniment of an orchestra. But this will be a much older piece of music, because we're going to present the Summer from the Four Seasons by Antonio Vivaldi. So now, after the 2 Polish accents, we have a part of our concert which has the summer inspirations. So Antonio Vivaldi's a violin concerto today with an accordion, is a piece which carries a non-musical inspiration in it. So supposedly it was Antonio Vivaldi himself who wrote the sonnets, the poems which are connected to all the 3 movements, 3 inner movements of the piece. So now I'm going to recite all the 3 poems. Movement number 1. Under the heat of the burning summer sun, languish man and flock, the pine is parched. The cuckoo finds its voice, and suddenly the turtle dove and goldfinch sing. A gentle breeze blows, but suddenly the north wind appears. The shepherd weeps because, overhead, lies the fierce storm and his destiny. Movement number 2. His tired limbs are deprived of rest by his fear of lightning and fierce thunder, and by furious swarms of flies and hornets. And then the 3rd movement. Alas, how just are his fears. Thunder and lightning fill the heavens, and the hail slices the tops of the corn and other grain.
Thank you so much. So this piece was obviously written by a violin master, and now we are moving towards the piece connected with bandoneon and accordion master Astor Piazzolla.
So Astor Piazzolla also wrote 4 pieces depicting the 4 seasons, although they are much, much different from the 4 seasons by Antonio Vivaldi. Here they are just single movement pieces, and of course today we are presenting the Verano Porteño, so the portrait of the summer by Argentinian master of the bandoneon, which is basically a similar instrument to accordion in terms of the sound source, because it also uses the 3 reeds and was also built in early 1800s by a German constructor Heinrich Band. So this is where the name comes from, bandoneon. Then it was transported with German immigrants to Argentina and became the folk instrument of this country. So now Astor Piazzolla and our arrangement of his Verano Porteño. So that was the summer-themed part of our recital. So the third and the last one is the one which is with French composers. Actually, it's a part of the program which we prepared first for a concert which had an exhibition which actually came from Musée d'Orsay of Paris. And it was about the 19th century paintings, French paintings, of course. And we were tasked with completing a recital by only pieces by French composers. We added, of course, Chopin because he lived in France for although being a fully Polish composer. But probably the most fun piece on the program, which we after that started playing extensively, is Camille Saint-Saëns's Danse Macabre, so the Dance of Death. The piece carries a very, very interesting story to it because it's actually based on a poem by Henri Casalis. And the poem is about, it depicts the Halloween night. So each year, precisely at midnight, at a cemetery, and the midnight will be represented by the 12 strokes of midnight on the violin at the very beginning. Death appears. And Death plays a fiddle, kind of a folk violin. And Death wants to take all the skeletons, all the dead from the cemetery out for some dancing on Halloween night. So Death plays an interval which in the Baroque and in earlier periods of music was referred to as diabolus in musica, a devil's interval. Can you hear me? Yeah, that's perfect. Which is basically an augmented fourth, which sounds really, really different from regular, from other intervals, like the thirds. We have, so this is the devil's interval. So of course, Death succeeds in calling on the skeletons from the grave, so they start dancing with the death through the night, and we can hear some really fun Easter eggs added by Camille Saint-Saëns. One is this tune, which is a medieval chant, or maybe also earlier, a Gregorian chant, Dies Irae. So, but it appears, because it's a fun piece, the skeletons and the deaf are having fun. So it's not in a minor key, but in the major key. And I'm sure you'll all notice when that happens in the piece. I will try to also show it maybe with my eyes. So then we also have, what do we have? Oh, we actually have something that we haven't spoken before, but it's going to be a surprise for you too. So there is this moment which then is in the Carnival of Animals as fossils theme. The same melody. So this means that this music is about the skeletons, right? And it will be also played by Karolina with a technique called conlegno, which means striking the strings of your instrument with the wooden part of the bow to imitate the skeletons and the rattling bones. And then when this, the fun goes on all night, and then for the break of dawn, a rooster calls. And this is the sign for all the skeletons to crawl back to their graves and wait another year for a fun night out with death. Thank you so much. What a pleasure it is to play for you tonight. And we have one piece left on the program, which is also by a French composer from a similar period, a bit later, a bit closer to the 20th, actually in the 20th century, Maurice Ravel and his concert rhapsody Tzigane, so a gypsy. And this piece starts with a very long, beautiful violin solo, which is mostly on the G string, right? So on the lowest string. So Karolina will not be moving anywhere but the G string. And then this piece is just such a fun piece to play. It's, of course, we have arranged it from the version for violin and orchestra. Also, there is a piano violin version, but we always try to listen to the orchestral sounds when we arrange our pieces, because the possibilities of this instrument are just so big and probably a bit closer to the orchestral sound than the piano. So we just wanted to say a big thank you from Karolina on the violin, Iwo on the accordion, and yes, and enjoy Tzigane by Maurice Ravel.
Thank you for joining us at